Well, awesome. Let's kick it off. Let's start by kind of beginning at the resident journey a little bit and the factors that are influencing the way residents are interacting with customer experience. Sound good?
Hi, everyone. Whitney Kidd, Senior Vice President of Innovation and Technology with the Priess Company. Just a bit about us. We're a student housing firm out of Raleigh, North Carolina. We have 70 assets across the country. We also have 3 market rate deals. So my goal for everyone today is to really give you a perspective of what the future renter is demanding from us, which we are hearing it loud and clear. When we're answering your question and talking about the demands of what we're seeing, it's truly around flexibility today. And when we're looking at the website and the front end experience, we've gotten to a place, and actually one of our partners is sitting in the front row, where our offerings are so robust. We have 4 different types of tour experiences, from self-guided to virtual. We have virtual touring experiences. We have the regular content on the website, just a tremendous amount of offerings to meet our residents where they want to be met. And what we have really focused on the past year is how to streamline that on the front end experience, how to make it simplistic, and how to make it user-friendly. We've had a great partner that's helped us do that. Our touring page alone at one point was, probably just too tremendous and overwhelming for anybody to really have a good user experience when looking at that. And we've had some really great success by streamlining that, and in addition with our virtual leasing agent as well. So again, I'll speak to the Gen Z perspective. We hear a lot about millennials, but your next resident they're going to be Gen Zs. They're coming soon. They are going to need every option along the way, and they're going to demand that from you when they go into a market rate conventional asset.
Yeah, hi, I'm Leigh Sublett. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing and Communications for Venterra Realty. And we have 80 apartment communities, 25,000 units, Southeast US. And we have 3 new developments that we're breaking ground on. So we talk a lot about lease ups these days. So similar to what Whitney said, of course, but I think that renters today are looking for a personalized experience. It used to be something that was nice to have, but now it's a requirement, it's expected. Customized, personalized. Website, talking more about that. Mobile, 80% of our traffic is mobile. So all of your conversions, anything that anybody is normally wanting to do in the office, they'll be doing on their mobile phone. So making sure that it's rendering properly, conversion opportunities, going online, anything that they're wanting to do, like I said, in the leasing office, they need to be able to do on their phone. And I heard this in a panel yesterday, and I agree with it, but renters are wanting to see more unit-specific information, not just a model and not just the location, but the actual unit. And I agree with that. And there's some good technologies out there that are, making that a more scalable solution. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Grady Newman, founder of Resi. We're a multifamily marketing platform and have a website builder hoping to create a more e-commerce-like experience for the renters of today. And excited to talk about this. I'm going to echo a lot of the same things shared by Leigh and Whitney, in that the way we need to look at our future renters today is they're shopping the same way that they shop or that you shop for anything else online. And that's the way that we need to be looking at our technology, right? The way that you would shop for a new coat today. You're going to do all that research online. You're going to want to see images of it, want to look at all the different colors, all online, and then actually going into the store is just the same as trying it on to make sure it fits. And that's the way that we need to be meeting the future renter today.
Awesome. Whitney, you talked a little bit about Gen Z and how they're going to be, they are our current renters or future renters. What changes are you finding in their expectation for when interacting with properties, like digital assets, like websites and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I'll speak a little bit to communication here. This is my personal favorite, because I think the way that we communicate is really transforming with a lot of the tools that we have available to us. But we conducted a survey across our portfolio, and this might not be of shock to you, but we found that 90% of Gen Z does not prefer to communicate via phone. That's something they're very adamant about. And what I found fascinating is we talked about top 3 fears with them as well. One of their top 3 fears in life is an awkward phone conversation. Top 3 fears, right? Mine's heights. I don't know about you guys, but so we're really taking that to heart at the Priess Company, and we've been piloting a new communication experience, which is somewhat of a select your engagement path, and that path is going to carry all the way through the move-in experience. So if you're a renter that does not want to engage with anyone whatsoever, you want a full technological experience from start to finish, you're able to do that within our communities. If you want a concierge level experience where you have some of our agents assisting you throughout the whole process, you're able to do that as well. And then we see a large that are in the middle, right? They're looking for a blend. And what I've found fascinating, what we've been able to do is we are actually tailoring our marketing campaigns and the prospect experience to that level of engagement. So if we know how they want to interact with us, we're not going to call them 100 times, right? I think we've all had this experience where even, let's say it's a supplier, and I used to be one, so I did this too. They call you 3 to 4 times a day. At that point, you're annoyed, right? You don't want that to happen, and it's not a good experience for you. So we're trying to meet our renters where they're at with the communication preferences that they would like to see. And that breaks all the traditional models that we have done for decades and decades of coordinated follow-up, scheduled calls, all of that. But we found some great results. At our pilot property, we had 13% rent growth, and leasing velocity was up 7% year over year. So we're seeing some great results of meeting the renter where they are in regards to communication.
It's wonderful. Leigh, what about you?
Yeah, similar thoughts to what Whitney has, but about 2 years ago, we started asking our customers, what their preferred method of communication was, and our residents still prefer email. Definitely not going away. Still their favorite. Text is gaining some engagement, specifically with our prospects. So earlier this year, we created some templates in our CRM for on-site teams to be able to use to blast out availability, promotions, things like that. And that engagement has really gone up. And that kind of complements the mobile experience. So if you're trying to get prospects to engage with you, you send them a text, link to your website. They're gonna do it on their phone. So your website needs to be mobile friendly there. Chat, of course, gaining engagement, and I think as that AI improves, there's that word count. Set the ticker.
Not to say it,
As that improves, I think engagement will go up on that also. In-app notifications. Getting our residents to download our app, it's a challenge. But once they do that, I think the in-app notifications are really a good way. We see a lot of good engagement with that too. So,
Grady, I'm going to kind of shift the question a little bit since you know a lot about websites. How are you seeing the integrations for additional tech playing into that? Like, where are you seeing residents engaging more on websites with either chatbot integrations, form fills, direct chat, that kind of stuff?
Certainly, we're of course seeing an increased usage of the chatbot tools and the interactive site maps. Really, all future renters want is more content. They want to learn more about your property than they ever have before. And I know it can seem daunting, right? We have a new challenge in front of us and potentially some investment in creating that type of content. But you need to allow your future renters to do that deep dive and answer all of their own questions. And in the end, you're going to end up with a much more beneficial setup for your team on site, because you're allowing your tools to pre-qualify your leads before they're going on site. So your teams are going to be able to focus more on that experience and more on just closing that deal versus fielding questions that could have been easily answered by whether it be a chatbot or an interactive map and FAQs page. We see a lot of other content that's beneficial, both from an SEO perspective as well as from on-site engagement. Traffic on websites where we're adding a lot of this additional content. In terms of engagement, we're seeing average times being up in 3, 4, 5 minutes and up when you're adding all that time. That's people diving in. And with that, we want to make it really engaging when we're to mention Gen Zers again. 90% of Gen Zers are multitasking while they're researching. So we need to make our information as easy to get to and as engaging as possible, because we're in an attention war.
Is there a specific type of content that you're seeing them engaging more with? Is it more just the floor plans? Are they wanting to learn more about the neighborhoods that they're in? Like, what kind of content are you seeing on the website that people want to see?
Well, I think, of course, we're going to continue to see most people want to get the basic information. They want to know pricing. They want to know what their different options are. We're definitely seeing an increased desire to have unit level content. And I think that's where we're going to continue to go. People want to see their actual unit. They want to see photos of that actual unit. That the age of just looking at a floor plan is, slowly weaning out.
Leigh, I'm gonna throw this one to you. How are you seeing tech streamlining the lead to lease process?
Yeah, things are changing and advancing all the time there. One of the things that, another keyword, frictionless, any technology that can make a process for the customer easier, faster, frictionless. At Venterra, we have a very straightforward, no risk, easy application process. So no fees are due up front, no commitment. And then once you're approved, then you can decide to reserve your apartment. I think that being able to offer that experience is what renters are looking for. CoStar is offering something now too, where you can put an application link on the apartments.com ad. And I don't know how I felt about this at first, because I felt like it increased our dependency on ILSs to an extent. But if you're looking for a way to decrease the steps that a renter needs to take, it's worth trying. So we are actually trying that out. And then something else that we're also doing is unit agnostic applications. So traditionally, renters have to search through, filter, find the apartment that meets their needs, price, budget, date, availability, things like that. And then they apply for that exact apartment and go through the process. But what we're doing is they basically apply without selecting an apartment, and then we use technology on our side to then match them up to what meets their needs. And I think that takes the burden off of, especially with the new generation, they just want it easy. So, they give us information, we'll tell them what works for them. This actually helps with qualifications a lot. We've been getting a lot of non-qualified applicants. I'm sure everybody has. Yeah.
Whitney, I'm going to throw it to you next with the frictionless topic that Leigh brought up. What are you seeing as some of the other steps that are being taken to help with that frictionless stuff?
Yeah, and we talk about lead to lease, and when we're evaluating it, we're actually looking at lead all the way through the move-in and even move-out experience. So I know we're talking a lot about front end right now, which there's so many great tools, right? I mean, online leasing's been around for decades. Y'all are doing some really fascinating things in regards to reducing those barriers to entry. But we're taking it a step further as well of when they step foot on the community and they're going to move in with us at the Priess company. And what we have seen when we evaluated our communities, I'm sure many of you, if you're owner-operators here, can resonate, is they have this really beautiful front-end experience. It's easy, it's technology-driven, and then they get to the office and they still have to sign paperwork. They then have to pick up a brass key and a key fob, and there's just all of these different layers, right? Even just to access through our community, that's very cumbersome. So we've taken a step to streamline what we're doing from an access control and smart home technology perspective, so that our residents can continue that seamless technology-driven experience all the way through move-in. And again, really tying into what we're doing of if they want zero engagement from our community staff, they can do so, but we've had to put a lot of work and a lot of capital into retrofitting our communities to be able to allow them to access the apartment community without ever stepping foot in the office.
You mean I don't have to show up anymore, dig up my checkbook and bring my deposit check?
No longer.
That's awesome. Grady, what about you? How are you seeing the frictionless process affecting websites?
What a great word.
Frictionless.
This definitely comes into play a lot on the website experience in general, and that's nothing new, right? We've always wanted to make sure to have as streamlined of a process as possible. The second that a user encounters anything that's any type of friction in a web experience, you lose them. Right, 88% of people that are going to have a bad first impression of their website are never going to return. If you have to make somebody wait more than 5 seconds, they're gone. This is the world that we live in today, so we need to be using as much of a modern architecture and as much of a new and fresh look that's going to match what they're experiencing in all of their other shopping platforms. Because we're not just competing with other properties today in the shopping experience. You're competing against the way that people shop on Amazon, where you can make 2 clicks and have a banana and a hammer delivered to your front door in 20 minutes. This is what we're up against. And we have a long ways to go to make all the different tools and systems that are utilized as seamless as possible, right? If you're out shopping for something online and you're making a significant purchase, if that opens up a new window that's not unbranded and not with the same company, that's a red flag to you today. We've all learned for that to be a red flag, and that's oftentimes what we still encounter in this industry. So we're actively trying to take steps to make that process seamless all the way from the front of the renter journey.
Excellent. So kind of talking on the whole topic of this, how e-commerce and fintech platforms, what are you guys seeing in terms of those platforms transforming the process for rent payments? Are you guys seeing anything specific that you're using today?
Yeah, I'll take that one. And our pre-call, I always get this question being in student housing. It's, are they still asking for crypto, right? Is that, and I can tell you it's not something that we're seeing as often. We got a little bit of it in the crypto surge in the early days, but it's not something we're seeing. Now, what we are being asked is, again, my keyword for this week is flexibility, right? And ease of use in your payments. So the largest request we're getting when we're looking at rent transactions is the ability to use platforms like Apple Pay and Google Pay, right? Not very revolutionary, but we are somewhat pigeonholed with our property management solutions. Obviously, payments are a large revenue driver for them, so that's not something that they've been very excited about adding to their platforms, but it's really that ease of use. So maybe if we all get in this room and kind of make a big push to the top three, we can make that happen. So I think it's really, again, meeting them where they're at, providing what you can. We've not found a solution for that ask that we're getting yet, because again, we're somewhat held in the current payment platforms we have, but that's the largest request that we're seeing, is make it simple, right? I want to tap to pay, or I don't want to have to enter my credit card information. And Plaid and some of the other platforms that integrate in with resident portals, it's great, but they want more. They're definitely requesting more and more accessibility with different platforms for payment.
And you, in our call too, you also mentioned like companies like Built and credit card processing that way. Are you seeing more adoption towards those tools, or like the need for wanting to use credit cards for the rewards aspect of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not a Built customer yet, but we're definitely exploring, and we have to right size it for the student market. But I mean, when I was doing some research for the panel, if we look at the top credit card companies, they paid over $69 billion in rewards over the last several years. So it's no surprise that our renters are going to expect a similar experience when they're living in our communities. So we're exploring platforms like Built. There's some others that are rental reward based that are pretty exciting. But we also want to make sure that we are applying, and we'll talk about this later in the panel, but having ethical responsibility, especially with our demographic. We feel, and our firm's thesis is that we have a responsibility to help educate the consumers, especially those that are young and they're entering the world of renting. That's something that we want to make sure we're very careful about and baby step into, so that we're making sure we're offering the right things to our customers, and as well as providing education around any kind of financial tech solution.
I think that's so key. I mean, that's the worry of about a third of the top concern about a third of Gen Zers today is cost of living. And it's a scary world out there today, and they absolutely need some proper guidance. I think that's wonderful.
On the vendor side of things, like, are you seeing a change in how property managers want to do payments? And are you adapting to some of that method of like accepting invoices in a different way or payments in a different way?
Well, I can't really speak to that vendor side, so you might have some input there. But one of the things that we're doing, it's an in-house effort, but still is just offering discounts for auto pay. So just getting people to set up auto pay, whether they use a credit card or whatever on their side, but just getting them to set that up so that we are getting payment on time and offering a discount for that. That's kind of we pitch it as a renter perk, and then also just it's a benefit on our side too.
Happy to speak briefly about the payments from property management companies and how that works. It's still very much running through the old ways. We get paid by check by many vendors today. I would love to adopt new systems that are much more seamless. It's wonderful when we do get paid by Stripe, and it's a lot less of a lift. Sure, there are some fees, but it's a much easier process. And to the same way, that's what renters want today, and that's what vendors would love as well.
We try.
So next question then, I'm going to throw this out to Leigh. How is technology helping make renting more financially attainable? Like, where are you seeing the tools there?
Yeah, I mean, there's some new tools that are making that a little bit easier for renters. So, a far stretch, but it's still some logic behind it is, things like Airbnb or Hello Landing. There's different things that are tools that will allow people, renters to have low commitment, low entry. There's flexible payment options, of course, with those two. No deposits, easy transfers. With Airbnb, there's some vendors that we're talking to that are working with them directly, and it's been frowned upon for your residents to just start Airbnb their apartment, but there's some structure being put in place there. So limiting the number of days that they can Airbnb their apartment. So if they're tight on budget, if they're able to Airbnb it 30 days or maybe 60 days out of the year, that could compensate for making up for the rent. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's something new, and we're looking into it. And then there's benefits on our side too with lease ups and new development. So having that partnership, it looks like there's some opportunities coming up.
I think that it's really important to be incorporating that into design on the front end. What we've seen with some of our clients is that when you have those units intermixed with the rest of your community, having that transient that those transient renters can really affect that sense of community and have a big impact on the overall renter experience. So we've seen more success when we're dedicating a floor or an area or designing even separate elevator stacks. If you're really looking to make an investment like that, can have a really big impact of how the short-term rental works within a community.
Whitney, what about yourself?
Yes, and I'll speak to the flexible rent payments because that's something that we have had some great success with. Last year, we had around $5 million in rent payments paid through our partner Flex. So there's obviously a significant demand for renters to want that flexibility of when they're able to pay. It's helped us reduce delinquency drastically, which has been great to see. So I will tell you again, the future renter is going to be expecting a product. It doesn't have to be that particular provider, but a product of that nature to be able to, safely live in their homes, have some flexibility if there's a hard month, right? We've all been through it, where you might not be able to pay on the 1st or by the 5th. And so that's something we've seen great success with. Another story I'll share is actually, I'm not going to say the firm, but very large firm in our industry. They're trying a new concept that I found fascinating, and developing communities where you're going to have limited services. So there's a specific cap on what the renewal is going to be, and that's negotiated with the investors ahead of time to make sure that returns are meeting. But what they're doing is, if you move into that type of community, it's much more affordable, but you're only going to get maintenance 2 days a week outside of emergency services, and you're not going to have anyone on site that's able to help you from a concierge perspective. So somewhat limiting services to provide more affordability in housing, which I think is going to be something we'll see more in the future, especially as centralization is taking off. But again, if you might know the firm that's doing this, they're one of the largest, but very fascinating concept of how we meet our renter and provide an affordable living experience while also making sure that our margins look good and we're able to, negotiate some rates and really build in some efficiencies with centralization tactics.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. There's some operators out there, new development specifically, that are building like the more of the micro communities. I've heard them called a bunch of different things, but very low amenities. Maybe no pool, no club room, things like that. So just trying to provide that little bit more affordable living experience where you're just kind of focused on your apartment. And different generations, millennials specifically, they're so private, may not even use those amenities anyway, so might not want to pay for them, not needed at all.
I'm going to just share a model that I've been kind of obsessed with recently, which has been a successful one in Canada, where in order to make living much more affordable, or creating jobs for their residents within their communities, that they're allowing their renters to be the managers of the property. And that's created a pretty unique type of community that allows more ownership of the home, take better care of the asset. I think there's a win-win there if there's a way to make that work at scale.
Is it an application process, nomination? Like how are they selecting the managers? Is it like tribunal?
The application process is a very, very unique one. It's much more of a personality type test than it is a full general rental application. I'd recommend anybody check it out. Happy to tell you where to go.
That's very cool. I want to switch over to, you talked a little bit about like resident perks and stuff earlier. So how are you finding residents latching onto that? Like where are you seeing them draw in the need for these resident perks?
I can start at the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, there we go.
Resident Priess is actually absolutely a bonus. And we're seeing a huge benefit from establishing those programs, communicating what those perks are on the front end. There's a huge SEO lift to your website to be talking about all those perks, to be linking to all of those different businesses. And then the renters are aware of them when they're coming in, and leading into maybe segueing into talking about how that you guys are actually seeing that being benefited.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some great success with strategic partnerships outside of the industry. I think Marcy with RKW actually spoke of one yesterday. I think it was with Pellegrino or one of those beverages that they've partnered with. And we've looked at items like that too. One that we worked with was Target on a national scale. So they were able to receive forms of discounts if they lived with us, paid rent on time. So we've really built in some of the partnerships to allow our residents and what they're looking for and what they would like to see have a benefit if they're a great renter with us. And again, we've got some work to do. I think there is some great futures ahead with Built and programs of that nature to help assist with that. I actually had somebody, it was a parent that came up to me and she says, are you a Built community? And again, we're not a customer. And I said, no, we're not. And she's like, well, I'm going to pay with a Built credit card anyways. But these rewards are just exceptional. And they wipe the fee, right? Which is really exciting for our renters. So I think multiple levels of how we incentivize our residents, but we've had great success on the national partnership scale, but also looking at other solutions that may be innovative to the space, like Built and others.
Speaking on this still, our experience is more on a local level, but we have several communities, about a dozen, that have retail below. So establishing those partnerships and discounts and it creates a sense of community for the residents, and then they're also able to, and it supports the local businesses, and then we own those retail spots anyway, so it's kind of a benefit on both sides for us on that.
Nice. How are you identifying, so like Target, what drew you to Target for that one? Like, how did you settle on that versus like a Walmart or an Aldi or something?
We were introduced to a contact at Target, and there was another student player in the space that had done something similar. So we learned from them and grew that relationship. We have done surveys with our residents to see where they're shopping, and I think this is a vast opportunity for our entire industry. I think when we look at any consumer space, I would argue to say that multifamily, we know less about our consumers and our customers than any other consumer industry out there. So we are very driven into finding the information. Survey is a way to do it, but we're also looking at some artificial intelligence tools to help with that as well and hear what residents are saying and meet their demands. But that's how that partnership came about. It was another operator in the space that introduced us, and again, just making sure that residents were looking for that via survey. But in the future, I think it will be more AI collection, so we can truly individualize the experience and making it a customer-centric journey.
Mind if I pipe in on that? I love that you brought that up, that we know the least amount about our customers, which is mind-blowing. They literally live in our properties, and we know the least about them than anybody else. In fact, the world should look at the opposite. We have this captive audience. We have so much to learn about our renters and can be a gatekeeper for them for all of these other businesses. And that creating those perks programs is wonderful to be doing on a local level, and I highly recommend that, and have seen very positive results from that. But there are also other much lower lifts to be able to do that. There's perks APIs that are available even today to be able to connect with all of the larger national companies.
So earlier you talked a little bit about like navigating regulatory and compliance issues and just the ethics of all of this and like understanding your consumer a little bit more. There's also some like privacy stuff that you want to try and navigate. Like, how are you finding companies like you, like with the surveying and trying to get into that issues a little bit?
Well, especially when we look at FinTech or anything that has resident data included, and this is anybody technical in the room, it's not shocking, but I'll throw a few of our regulations and standards out for supplier partners that we work with. You have to be SOC 2 compliant. You also have to be PII if you're in the payments industry. That's very important to us because we need to protect our resident data. We've seen that time and time again in the industry and other industries where there's a real risk there. So I would encourage everyone in the room to make sure when you're working with someone, especially early stage, and we love the early stage companies and helping them grow, helping them through those security protocols is definitely important when we're looking at FinTech aspects. I already talked about our thesis on the ethical approach, which I think is good for everyone to look at. And another area that I would really look at and explore, and we've got some AI experts in the room, is what our future is going to look like with the way that AI is learning about our resident base and our prospects, and how that data is going to be protected and utilized in a way that's going to be compliant. So those are some of the things that we're really digging into. One more thing about FinTech that if you follow David Sachs, he was a PayPal founder. I think something to explore when you're looking at new FinTech solutions, and this is kind of along the line of compliance and security, is to make sure there's truly a technology platform there. Because if there's not, it's a bank. It's not a FinTech company, it's a bank. And there's a few out there, and we've been able to uncover that, right? So if you don't have a platform that you can log into, if you don't have integrations into your property management software, even if the functionality is terrific, that might not necessarily be a FinTech platform. And that's something I learned from David that we definitely need to explore, especially as things are evolving in our space from a FinTech aspect.
Well, I was just going to pipe in with how we can be making a more streamlined transaction. This had me thinking about a process I'd seen be put into place where, imagine this, you're now shopping online, find exactly what you want for your unit, you show up at the property, meet with the leasing agent, sign a document that's happening there. While you're on your tour, you have your background check completed, and when you're done with your tour, you have an application that's ready to be signed in person or digitally. These are the types of things that are available today with not a huge and heavy lift, just a little bit of attention to every one of those steps that you can make a little bit more streamlined or frictionless, can have a huge impact on what that looks and feels like for your renter.
Leigh, do you have any thoughts on the regulatory side? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that. I mean, I'm agreeing with everything so much. I feel like I'm going to, repeat it, but, taking that friction out. I don't think I have anything to add, actually. I'm literally going to say everything that Grady just said.
Awesome. Well, so last question that we have is kind of in the era of data breaches being a significant concern, how are multifamily e-commerce and FinTech platforms kind of ensuring the security and privacy of the tenants?
I'll speak to this, and similar to my response that I just gave, but I think that depending on the size of your organization, making sure you're going through a vetting process, whether that be with your internal IT teams, or we've even used in the past IT consultants that help us with the security process, is very vital. I would not necessarily depend on the supplier themselves to fulfill all of those items. You are able to receive some documentations around the items I spoke to, like SOC 2 and PII. That's relatively easy. But if you're taking a large step, especially when you're involved in the payments industry, an evaluation or having an IT expert in-house is extremely crucial in today's environment. That's, I mean, in essence, what we need to do across the board here today. But I think those are the major components for us and what we're doing at Priess.
Grady, with you guys having the website component and applications coming through that website, like, are you seeing any regulatory stuff that you have to manage on your end?
We've maintained a pretty low touch with customer data to this date because of this, because there are security concerns. As we are entering into further steps in that renter journey, and as we're trying to make a more streamlined transaction, that's absolutely a topmost concern. And I'd say that it can be confusing with all of these different regulations that you want to be meeting, and it is very important today. I'd say the best place to start is to make sure you just understand where your data is. As you're integrating all of these different platforms, try to simplify, ask questions of your vendors, and make sure you just really understand where that data is living, where it's moving around to as your different platforms are connecting. Understanding the basics of that is essential to even beginning to start the process of different certifications.
Excellent. No.
Yeah, I can add to that. We have our proprietary in-house PMS, so we have our own cybersecurity team. So any vendors that are going to be working with our proprietary systems have to go through an extreme vetting process. So we do handle that in-house. It can be challenging though, but most of the vendors that we work with know that going in. But I think you have to state that clearly because it does become an obstacle when you have your own proprietary systems.
And I'll add one last point too, because there's somebody in the room that I'm very inspired by and what they're doing from a data standpoint, which goes into security, also ties into what we talked about earlier of really truly knowing your customer. I think that we're stepping into a stage where owner operators really need to be empowered to own your own data, right? To bring that data in-house, to be able to utilize it yourself, and not just have that data sitting in with your property management software or supplier partners. There's such incredible efficiencies when you own that data and are able to manipulate it and use business intelligence tools that can really empower you and provide you additional insight that you may not have with some of these more archaic solutions that are housing our data today. So it's another aspect I would look at in all areas of technology that we're working with today. There's such great functionality. It's something we're stepping into right now when you're owning your own data and not allowing that to be owned by another partner.
Awesome. You guys were absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you guys being here today.